I would get so much anxiety when we had like the state
Mhm.
tests in high school,
Yeah.
and then like it would end up doing awful just because of my anxiety. Um,
Yeah.
so I did want to talk about your book Transcend, and what I think is interesting is Maslow's hierarchy. So not everyone's going to know what that is, especially if they never took like a psych class or it's been like a really long time. But essentially, it's it's a pyramid of needs, right? And then you kind of like redefined that. So I want to talk about how you kind of turned the pyramid into a sailboat. And then I also noticed that you got rid of like the base model, which was physiological, and if there was a reason for that.
Sure. So, have you seen like the famous pyramid of hierarchy of needs? I
Yes.
think everyone kind of learns it in their introductory psychology classroom, where you have this pyramid with basic physiological needs at the bottom, and then you have security needs and connection, belonging, and self-esteem needs, and then boop, you go up to self-actualization. If you get all that, then you're self-actualized. Well, it turns out when I was digging into the writings of Abraham Maslow, the humanistic psychologist who is credited for that, he never actually drew a pyramid in any of his writings. When I was looking through his unpublished and published writings, I really got absorbed in that, and I was like, "Where is the pyramid? I don't see no pyramid." Like what? So, um, so I was like, "Got to tell people about this." And some other researchers were independently also discovering that he never had a pyramid. And Todd Bridgman and colleagues wrote a really cool paper about tracing it to a 1960s organizational psychologist who I believe it started off as a step ladder with the man self-realized at the top with the flagpole because only men could be self-realized in the 60s, I guess. And so that was like the kind of idea about this. And when you actually dig into the writings of Maslow, you realize that what he really emphasized was the difference between security and growth. That sort of that dance, one could say. We don't feel as though we can fully grow and get outside our comfort zone and take risks when we are motivated by deficiency. So what I really liked is just his distinction between deficiency motivation and growth motivation. I think we're seeing a lot of deficiency motivation right now. I don't know if you've noticed in America. Uh,
Just a little bit.
yeah, it seems like everyone is motivated by deficiency, right? Like everything is like, and that you tend to see that under situations where there's a society doesn't feel stable. This is a very common thing that you'll see in a society that doesn't feel stable, a society that people cling to their tribes. They cling, it's very cyclical in human nature, and it's also very predictable, based on what we know about human nature. But I thought a better metaphor than the pyramid that Maslow never drew was a sailboat. And I didn't know if you wanted me to talk about the sailboat
Yeah,
metaphor, but I can, yeah, okay.
definitely. I want,
Um,
and definitely why you chose a sailboat rather than the pyramid.
Well, the pyramid kind of connotes like a way of like life's a video game in some way, right? Like you reach some level of need, like a certain threshold, like the
Mhm.
need for belonging, and you reach a certain level of belonging, and then like it's like as if some voice from above is like, "Congrats, you've unlocked connection," and then you can move up, move up to connection. You don't have to worry about like the one below it ever again. And I don't think that that's the best framing for one's existence,
Mhm.
because no one's exempt from returning to lower needs when in certain, we ebb and flow out of it, in and out of it, right?
Mhm.
We can pretend like, oh, my self-esteem's sorted, I don't need to worry about that anymore, I'm just self-actualizing, baby, well, I'm not calling you baby, but I'm
Yeah,
saying, like I'm just,
yeah.
yeah, okay, okay. I'm self-actualizing. And but the problem with the person who says that is that give them some critical feedback and don't tell me that they don't boom, they fall right back
Mhm.
to the self-esteem need. It's like I can feel as like self-actualized as can be some days, and then like if I write a tweet that I'm really excited about and gets like one like, I'm like, what the fuck? That got one like. That deserved at least three likes. So do you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's all about the point I wanted to emphasize in my book and with the sailboat is that we're one whole operating unit. We need to integrate ourselves, and we need to be a harmonious unit where all the parts of ourselves are working with each other, not against each other. We don't feel like we're fighting a civil war within ourselves, which is how Maslow put it.
Mhm.
Um, so with sailboat is more of like an experience through the vast unknown of the sea, and I think that's what life really is. You know, it's to life is to be experienced, to go on adventures, to get outside your comfort zone, to grow, to realize your full potentialities, but also acknowledging that if our boat has too many holes in it, if our basic needs are so deficient, like our needs for connection, safety, and self-esteem, if they're so low, we don't feel comfortable enough opening our sail and being fully vulnerable. But once we have a certain level where we feel like the boat's secure, then we have to grow. You know, you have to open that sail someday. You know, if you're going to grow, you're just not going to grow. You know,
Mhm.
it's like just being secure, it doesn't equal growth, right?
Mhm.
So going in the sea, and knowing that the winds and the waves can come crashing down on us at any point, right?
Mhm.
But we still move in our purposeful direction with a spirit of exploration and love. And that's the sailboat metaphor in a nutshell.
So you brought up like deficiency motives. Can you elaborate a little bit of what those are for the listeners? So when I hear that, I think kind of like growth mindset versus limited mindset a little bit, and some people might get uh, I don't know, maybe a little bit on guard about this because it's like it's whether or not like you're looking at things from like an introspective way or an extra like or from the outside, like life happens to me, not for me, kind of a thing. Are
Why would
those
people get on guard?
because I think people when shit hits the fan and let's say like you're like and especially right now like given 2020 and the very beginning of 2021, it's very understandable that people are going through a very rough time like on all walks. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's a little bit more satisfying to be able to point outward and say, this is the reason, rather than reframing it, because there's always a way to
Yeah.
look at things with gratitude and be able to kind of like open up your sailboat or like move your way up that pyramid. Does that make sense? So, like, looking at things from a
Yeah.
deficiency motivator would be like, I lost my job. I haven't been able to see my family, and I'm going to be in this negative spiral. And then you have your physiological and your safety parts of the pyramid just kind of like buckling under you a little bit. But if you were to
Yeah.
reframe that and then find a source of gratitude and a source of purpose, then it wouldn't be as detrimental to your growth.
I wrote an article for Scientific American called "Is It Time for a Personal Growth Mindset?" To distinguish it from a growth mindset. And what I mean by that is, I think we want to make sure that we're choosing, making decisions that are helping us grow as a whole person,
Mhm.
and not just one part of us. Um, a lot of people, so that's why I distinguish between a growth motivation and a growth mindset. What I'm here today to promote on this podcast of yours is a growth motivation, not a growth mindset. And it might be taboo, but it's taboo in certain circles to say that. There's enough people promoting a growth mindset that I think there's
Mhm.
space for me to promote a growth motivation. Um, and the difference, as I see it, is that you can have a growth mindset up the kazoo, for the wrong things, right? You could have all the growth mindset in the world to do well in standardized tests, and yet you let all these other aspects of your being just flounder.
Mhm.
You could have the biggest growth mindset to like, and grit. Grit's another big one, and I love Angela Duckworth and the work she does. But again, the way it's applied sometimes, it's like it's as if the characteristic of grit and growth motivation, growth mindset, it like that in and of itself is all that matters,
Mhm.
right? But the context of the rest of your self is what matters. Are you to me, a growth motivation is one, are you making decisions that are leading to greater integration and wholeness in who you are? When we're deficiency motivated, we're making decisions that only are to defend ourselves.
Mhm.
um, when we're in deficiency motivation, we're often like treating ourselves like a fort that needs to be protected at all costs,
Mhm.
and that tends to lead to rigidity
Mhm.
in thinking.
Mhm.
right? You see that right now in every extreme direction,
Mhm.
every radicalization, is there's this very rigidity aspect to it, right?
Mhm.
That's being motivated by deficiency. But when you're motivated by growth, is the motivation. You're constantly asking yourself, will this decision or goal help me grow as a whole person? Abraham Maslow has a great quote, and I'll be quoting Abraham Maslow all day long. he has this great he has this great quote. What's not worth doing is not worth doing well. And again, I hope my point makes sense. You can have a growth motivation towards a goal that isn't right for you,
Mm.
so you should just be rewarded. Oh, great. Look, you have the growth mindset. You're amazing. You're amazing. You're wonderful. It's like, no, that wasn't actually the right goal for that person. You see a lot of posturing. You see a lot of people who think they should be someone else, or they think they should be in their career, or they you can kind of tell. Can you kind of tell people who are not comfortable in their own skin,
Mhm.
that sort of thing. And my heart breaks sometimes when I see some of that, because you just want to say to that person, like, you know, um, you know, like, there are decisions that will be right for you, and you should have confidence to take those decisions. Does
Mhm.
that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So I guess if you find I guess self-awareness is part of it, but when you find yourself maybe in a habit of making decisions based off of like deprivation or lack, how do you is it possible to start looking at things differently if you don't have those basic needs met? Like if you don't have that safety met or that connection met? Because I think a lot of people are struggling with that now. So it's like, how do we make these improvements when we're still being told we can't see each other, or like I still can't open my business, or whatever your reason is, because it
Mm.
is such a crazy time. So is it possible to reframe the way that you're thinking when you have all of the external factors coming at you like super hard?
Yes, I do think so. And I think that if uh, one of the founders of this humanistic philosophy that I live my life by, Viktor Frankl,
I
if
love
he
him.
can, oh,
Mhm.
great, great. If he can, he's influenced my work a lot as a modern day humanistic psychologist. I consider him a foundation of my work. If he and others in the concentration camp could find moments of joy, then anyone can. Okay, like,
Mhm.
come on, let's be
Mhm.
honest.
Mhm.
Um, the thing is, you're in control of the joy. Don't No one can rob you of your capacity to create meaning and to have hope in your head
Mhm.
for the future. And if you let people win, if you let that happen, then you're letting that happen, to a certain degree. Now, I think that it's a complex issue, because when we talk about mental illness, or people who are suffering with, like, severe, like, depression, for instance, the last thing you want to tell someone with depression is, "Oh, just be happy. Oh, just be joyful." And I want to be very nuanced in my answers, because I don't think that's the best way to help someone with depression. But I will say that one of the best remedies, not remedy, that sounds corny, remedies for mental illness, like, sounds like mother's home remedy, the best tonic for mental illness. One of the sometimes I say, like, words I don't mean to say, and I'm like, what did I just say that? One of the best ways to help reduce the suffering of someone with depression, that's what I'm trying to say, is actually helping that person not focus on themselves so much. Self transcendence, helping them get out into the community and help others and get out of their own head. I view neuroticism as a form of narcissism. I call it vulnerable narcissism.
Mm.
And so, actually, self transcendence is a really great way of helping people who are kind of stuck in a deficiency motivation mindset.
Mhm.
The best way for them is not to keep ruminating on, oh, woe is me, 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 but say, oh, let me give something to someone. Let me have gratitude, for whatever I have. I'm alive. Well, that's good. Let's start there.
Mhm.
I like, that was a beautiful sunset. Oh, this is a beautiful connection I have with this person. I've always been really fascinated with, like, researchers who go, like, there was research who went to the slums of Calcutta in India, people who were living in extreme poverty on the street, and they found that the life satisfaction ratings of those people were higher than the average American.
I've seen
So
those. Mhm.
you don't have to reach you don't have to wait till your life is all perfect or some level before you can cultivate meaning and connection in your life, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you can find happiness at any point.